Rational numbers, absolute value, and m over n form, which is the same way as saying a fraction. We are 7th grade, Chapter 1, Lesson 1, Part 1. Please have out your notebook so you can take down vocabulary words and anything else you might find necessary. You also should have out Reteach 1.1 to follow along with. Please remember to pause or rewind anytime you feel necessary. So here are the vocabulary terms. We have a set of integers. Integers are the set of whole numbers and their opposites. Opposites, or an opposite, is a digit with the same value but the opposite sign. For example, the opposite of 3 is -3, or the opposite of -17 is 17. Positive integers are all of the numbers to the right of 0 on the number line. And negative integers are all the numbers to the left of 0 on the number line. Absolute value is the distance of a number from 0 on the number line. Absolute value can never be negative. That's very important to remember. Rational numbers, all that means is all numbers that can be expressed in m over n form or fraction form. Now would be a good time to pause to catch up on writing your vocabulary in your notebook. Absolute value. To find the absolute value of a number is simply telling how far away it is from 0 on the number line. Absolute value will always be positive because distance is always positive. The 2 bars here around our x is the signal that you are looking for absolute value of a number. So anytime you see 2 bars around a number, it tells you need to find the absolute value. So the absolute value of -17 here would be 17. So finding the absolute values of -5, 6, and 3/4, these are both rational numbers because they're in fraction form. To find the absolute value, you put in those bars if you need to. And again, all we're doing is looking at it and telling the distance away from 0. So the absolute value of -5, 6 is 5, 6. And the absolute value of 3/4 is 3/4. You can use the number line to show how far -5, 6 and -3/4 are from 0. And if you use that, you can easily visualize which number is closer to 0. So by looking at this number line, -5, 6 is 5, 6 units to the left, and 3/4 is 3/4 units to the right. So because the distance, 5, 6 units, is greater than 3/4 units, or 5, 6 is further from 0, 3/4 is closer to 0. So let's find the absolute value of 2 2/3 and -9/4. And there's no need to overcomplicate this at all. All we're doing when finding absolute value is putting it as it's positive because distance is positive. So 2 2/3 and -9/4 is 9/4. So we're going to graph the two numbers on the number line and indicate their distance. You might want to change 9/4 into a mixed number to help you graph it. Remember to do that. We use long division. We do 9 divided by 4. 4 goes into 9 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. We subtract 1, so we have 2 remainder 1, which in fraction terms is actually 2 1/4. So because it was negative, I'm going to start here at 0 and go back 1, 2, and estimate about where 1/4 would be. So this is where -9/4 was. Again, I'm writing it back in its rational form. -9/4 there. And then 2 2/3, because it was positive, I start at 0 and go to the right one. 2 2/3 would be right about there. And I label it. So which is further from 0? I would say 2 2/3, just by using my diagram there. 2 2/3 is further from 0. So another way of saying that would be the absolute value of 2 2/3 is greater than the absolute value of negative 9/4. So find the absolute values of negative 5/8 and negative 2/3. So you're just popping it in those two bars to show that you understand that's what it means. So negative 5/8 is 5/8. And the absolute value of 2/3 is 2/3. So then you can graph the number line. Since we're dealing with two fractions here under 1, less than 1, I'm going to just make my number line 0 in the middle, positive 1 being the furthest point to the right and negative 1 to the left. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball where I think negative 5/8 would go. Negative 5/8, this is just a little bit over half, because 4/8 would be half. And 2/3, again, I'm just eyeballing, and I would put it about here. And then you can say that 2/3 is further from 0, or the absolute value, it's a little close together. The absolute value of 2/3 is greater than the absolute value of negative 5/8. So now you're going to learn how to write mixed numbers in M over M form. We don't want to use mixed numbers when dealing with rational numbers too much because it just simplifies it for us. So mixed number, just a reminder, this is something you might want to write down in your notebook, is a whole number. So for example, this 3 combined with the fraction of 1/2. To change a mixed number to M over N form, the first step is to multiply the whole number times the denominator. So the 3 was the whole number, the 2 was the denominator. 3 times 2 equals 6. So now step 2 here, now I'm going to add the answer from step 1, 6, that's where that 6 comes, to my numerator. 1 was my numerator. So that equals 7, of course. 7 becomes my new numerator. And then lastly, my denominator stays the same. So I can rewrite 3 1/2 as 7/2. So we're just going to practice here writing each number in improper fraction or M over N form. They give you another example here. They showed right here that they did the 2 times 7. And then here they added the 6. And then that negative that was there, they just put right back in front. Just a reminder, any whole number can be turned by a fraction by simply placing it over 1. So let's try number 22. 3 4, 6. So first, I'm multiplying my whole number, 3, times my denominator, 6. And then I'm adding the 4 6. So 3 times 6 is 18 over 6, plus 4 6 equals 22 over 6. Negative 17 can easily be turned by a fraction by simply placing it over 1. You can have the negative on the bottom or the top in that fraction. It doesn't matter. Down here, there are just some more examples. Negative 15/10 is already in M over N form. There would be nothing to change in this one. Then you have 1 12/18. Again, I would do 18 times 1 over 18 plus 12 over 18, and I would get 30 over 18. To write decimals in fraction form, all terminating decimals, which means that they end, they don't go on forever, can be written in M and N form. The first step is to find the place value of the digit furthest to the right in the decimal. So in this example here, our digit furthest to the right is the 2. Since that 2 is in the thousandths place, 1,000 will be your denominator. So you can place that there, and then easily enough, you put everything that is behind your decimal to the right of your decimal goes as your numerator. You can reduce your fraction in simplest terms if it asks you to. Okay, let's try an example here. We have 0.6. 6 was in the tens place, so we use that 10 as our denominator, and 6 is our numerator, and then they simplified by dividing by the greatest common factor of 2. Part B, we have negative 0.25. 5 is in the hundredths place, so that's where that 100 comes from. 25 becomes your numerator. We just plop the negative sign right in front there, and negative 25 over 100 simplifies down to 1/4. Now 7.5, a little different. We have a number to the left of the decimal. The difference here is no big deal. Anything to the left of the decimal would become your whole number. So we're going to write the integer 7. Write the integer 7 in front, and write 0.5 as 1/2. They simplified that ahead of schedule. If you needed to, you could have wrote 7 5/10 and simplified later. And then we just follow the same steps. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. It simplifies down to 2. If you would have kept it in this form, 7 times 10 is 70, plus 5 is 75 over 10. And then you would have divided by 5 and still wound up with 15 over 2.